Hey Donny, can I have a word? Damon leans towards Donny, who is standing next to Aru, waiting by the stairs. What do you need, dude? Donny purrs with curiosity. Do you know any magic about ghost possessions or mind control? You know, that sort of thing. Damon lowers his voice while attempting to look over his shoulder. No. But I can burn stuff and make turtle-sized holes in walls, if that's any help. Donny states and smiles proudly. I'm good. I'll keep that in mind. Damon quickly chases after Ains and Lucian, who are inspecting a wall outside the children's bedroom. Donny and Aru briefly look at each other with mild confusion and follow Damon around the corner, just in time to see Ains push a button, hidden among the golden-leafed wallpaper. The wall slides aside, revealing another hidden staircase. How did you know that was there? Damon growls with suspicion. The dollhouse. It's a replica of this one, including hidden passages. Crazy, right? Ains beams with a smile at Damon, who simply raises his eyebrow. You chaps go first. I'll have the rear. His eyes squint as he watches Ains and Lucian climb down the narrow spiral staircase. He closely creeps behind them, keeping an acceptable distance, attempting to appear casual while internally analysing the two, ever more convinced of their possession. Aru, Blossom and Donny follow closely behind. The stairs seem to wind down an unusually long way. The party hears a strange, rhythmic heartbeat. The more they descend, the louder the sound resonates throughout their entire bodies, until they finally reach the bottom step, when there is a sudden ringing in their ears. Blossom holds his head and cries, "Oh, 1,000 tiny bells!" Swiftly followed by complete, almost deafening silence. The party takes a moment to adjust to the uneasy atmosphere, but Ains and Lucian walk ahead without discomfort into a square room with grey walls. With surprising ease, Ains finds a black leather-bound notebook on the ground, covered in thick grey dust blending into the floor. Damon steps into the room cautiously. The walls are littered with dark red writing of random dates, words and symbols, some of them in every language that he seems to know. Fascinating, he remarks with excitable concern and pulls out his sketchbook. He continues to study the walls, while his hand scribbles down what he sees. Ains now drifts towards Damon and presents the black book close to his face. "Oh, this might be important." He smiles and taps a black fingernail onto the paper. Damon slams his sketchbook shut and slips it into his pocket. He is paying more attention to the drow than to the black book, but quickly flicks his eyes down before becoming immediately invested. These passages were written by different people. Some state about an oath to offer up souls to feed an entity, and others claim their soul is trapped by the same creature. Ains gives a wide, closed-mouthed smile, staring at Damon, and casually flips the book to a precise page. "Look what I just found. The ink becomes faint, but the next entries are dark brown at the end. It kind of looks like dried blood." Damon firmly finishes his sentence. Looks like someone run out of ink. He turns around to take the extent of the hundreds of messages on the walls. And then out of paper. The drow grins at Damon's deduction. Blossom softly runs his hands along the walls, occasionally pressing his ears against it and gently knocking the stone with his spoon staff, until he reaches the last wall, which receives a hard kick. "Oh, what is that?" He points excitedly. Damon inquisitively wanders over to Blossom and inspects the wall himself. "A door without a handle." Damon scratches his stubble. "How do we get this open then?" He wonders aloud. Donny points to himself enthusiastically. We can smash it down!" Damon purposefully causes his line of sight to avoid the turtle and stares in a different direction. "Let's look at our options."
"I vote for smashing."
Aru grins. Damon pinches the bridge of his nose and sighs. "Why do you people always insist on destroying private property?" Aru, Blossom and Donny look at one another before settling their eyes on Damon. Because it's fun! They simultaneously respond. In the background, Ains tilts his head and smiles as he pushes the pages of the book back to its start. Lucian stands close to him, holding onto the back of his cloak. his breathing heavy but controlled. He stares down at the floor silently and whimpers. It's all right. They will understand. Ains pats Lucian on the head and casually begins reading the first diary entry aloud. Donnie overhears and sharply turns, reaching out towards the drow. No, Ains, stop! Darkness fills everyone's vision. Their ears are consumed by muffled sounds as if they have dived underwater. Gradually, a soft light emerges, shimmering in the distance. The party chases towards the light. Their legs barely move, like they are almost running in slow motion. A sudden flash, and they take a deep breath. Aru finds herself sitting before a vanity table. She cannot control her movements as she delicately applies makeup. Within the mirror, she can see it is not her face staring back, but a beautiful human woman with glossy black hair, elegantly dressed in red velvet. Aru thinks for a moment. She kind of looks like the woman in the family portrait, only much younger. Her vision forcefully shifts over to a pale, middle-aged human man, standing at the window, sipping wine, and without fully seeing his face, she knows in her heart that this is her husband. Damon, Blossom and Donnie find themselves approaching the door of a grand house that seems strangely familiar. They cannot control their steps as they walk. All around them are well-dressed human nobles, adjusting their clothing with a cold shiver under the dark grey skies. They can feel a deep, gnawing hunger burning throughout their torso. Blossom can see his reflection within the glass of the front door. A tall, thin human woman in a flowing gown.
Oh, pretty lady.
But his words echo like a passing thought and are not actually spoken out loud. Blossom lets out a furious cry of panic as he thinks to himself, if I can't speak, what's the point? His screams echo into nothingness.
Where's my axe?
Wait, where's my shell? Where's my hat? Damon develops an odd sensation that these unfamiliar nobles he is standing outside with are his friends. He notices that they are not just lean, but gaunt and sickly looking. Their clothes are far too big for their small frames. Their skin is tight against their bones. They wheeze from the slightest movement. Damon turns to the weary woman clinging to his arm. His heart weeps with sorrow and is elated with joy at the same time. This is my wife, he states to himself. Suddenly, he has an epiphany. Whatever magic was holding him breaks, and with the sound of shattering glass, he regains a sense of self. The book! He exclaims. The book did this! Donnie hums a gleeful tune and takes a moment to casually wave his claw. A tickling can be felt within his inner ear. Well, thought so. Some kind of memory spell. His voice seeps out into darkness. Been a while since I saw one of these. He nostalgically sighs, reliving a memory of his youth. Guess I'll sit back and watch the show. Blossom, upon seeing himself as a sickly woman, comes to realize something is not quite right.
Blossom not woman.
He chuckles to himself, while the stoic, silent reflection remains unmoving. He then pauses.
Blossom thinking a woman.
He shrugs internally. The nobles are then invited into the house by a tired and balding butler. Welcome, sirs and madams, to Durst Manor. May I take your cloaks? The meeting shall be within the dining room this evening. Follow me, if you please. The nobles follow the butler through the hall, past a coat of arms bearing a windmill on a red field, next to a portrait, before being quickly ushered into a room with a beautiful marble fireplace and a grand spiral staircase. The party feel their bodies proceed without conscious choice into a windowless wooden-panelled dining room, and take a seat around a fine mahogany table. Upon finding their seats, Donnie manipulates the air with his claws.
This should give us more freedom.
His voice wanders into nothingness as the sound of cracking glass intensifies, and can be heard among all the party, as they realise they can now speak and move freely. Tell me you can hear me. Damon, please.
Sure can.
Donnie purrs with pride. Donnie, is that you, old chap? Damon stares quizzically at the red-haired human before him.
Totally.
Donnie nods. Blossom gives a cry of joy.
Oh, Blossom, talk!
He waves at the nobles, who continue to wait with their heads bowed at the table patiently.
Hello!
He waves, but they do not react. Blossom? Damon lifts an eyebrow, seeing the masked imp within a woman's body. Blossom waves.
Hello, Mustache Man!
What is going on? Damon flicks his head to face Donnie.
It's a memory, dude. We can manipulate it slightly, but whatever happened is always going to happen. There's no changing it, man.
Donnie gestures with his hands, forgetting he now has fingers. With slight disgust, he quickly places them under the table to hide them from his vision. A memory spell. Is that what Ains read from that blasted journal?
I did try to stop him.
Donnie's eyes widen.
You can't say I didn't.
Anyway, what do you mean by slight manipulation? Like, can I do whatever I want? Damon reaches to stroke his stubble, only to find smooth cheeks. His face contorts into a confused disgust.
Kind of, but if the memory deviates too far from what actually happened, you get side effects.
Donnie looks up, recalling his wizard studies. We should test its limits. Damon turns to the woman who he believed was his wife and asks openly, Hey, you, what's going on? The image of the wife strangely twists to face Damon, while also continuing to face forward, as if the illusion is altering from its true course.
Are you all right, darling? We are at Durst Manor. They invited us to dinner, remember?
Damon shifts his eyes towards Donnie for reassurance. Sure. I just want to know what they want.
They are going to propose a solution to our food problem. Are you sure you're all right, dear?
The wife caresses Damon's arm gently with elongated fingers. He uncomfortably slides his arm onto his lap. I see. I can't wait to meet them. The image of the wife jitters as it returns to its original position.
It's best to let it play out, man. Just remain calm. It's supposed to generate insight from a past event.
Donnie sighs and relaxes into his chair. Blossom giggles as he wiggles his slender womanly hands and has a sudden realization.
Children!
He steps out of the dining room and calls out,
Hello, children! Blossom lady now!
He wanders past the coat of arms and sees a portrait of Gustav and his wife in wedding clothes. They appear much younger than the portraits he remembers, and somewhat happier than before. Blossom feels a strange pulling sensation as he is dragged back to the dining room to sit at the table, slightly confused as to why his head is cold, as he is now bald.
Told you, dude. Side effects. Just let whatever happen.
Donnie giggles at Blossom. Upstairs, the lean man at the window feels his shoulders loosen. He looks down at his hand and then rapidly touches his face, and feels his chest before turning to the woman, who pauses midway through putting on lipstick, drops it to the floor and bolts up from the stool, feeling her form through her elaborate red dress. She whips her eyes towards the lean man, who looks just as shocked as she does.
What in the name of the Doombringer is going on?
Cries Aru, but her voice arrives to the room as an elegant tune. She holds her throat in confusion.
It worked.
The lean man stared into the woman's eyes.
Mother?
Aru screws up her face and steps back.
Hey, I'm not who you think I am.
The lean man smiles and picks up the glass of wine, takes a sip before grimacing and spitting it back into the glass.
How do grown-ups drink this?
Aru awkwardly reaches over her shoulder, searching for her trusted axe. She rolls her eyes when she can't find it.
What's going on?
She asks with the rare sense of fear in her voice.
Just watch and listen.
The lean man gives a closed-mouthed smile and tilts his head, then quickly brushes back his hair, strides out of the room and down the stairs. Aru feels compelled to follow. Back at the table, Damon looks around the room impatiently. He starts tapping the arm of his chair as he looks over at the other nobles who seem to only move when they breathe. Poor souls. Some kind of illness? He ponders aloud.
Maybe it's vampire.
Donnie replies before he is halted by Damon with a swift hand across his mouth.
Do not say it.
Damon whispers desperately and slowly removes his hand. He glances over at Blossom, who is attempting to sneakily steal a spoon from the table and hide it within the dress he is wearing. Blossom's gaze fixates on Damon before gently replacing the spoon back onto the table, still making unblinking eye contact. The door to the dining room swings open. A lean man confidently walks into the room. Wait, I know you. Damon states firmly, but the man ignores him. He is followed by a woman in a fine dress, but she walks like someone who is twice her size. Damon recognizes her familiar gait. Aru! Her eyes violently flash over the gaunt people seated at the table as she stands with pursed lips next to the lean man.
Thank you all for attending. Please enjoy the food, and we shall discuss matters afterwards.
He pulls out a chair and welcomes Aru to sit down. She feels her limbs obey the man's command and is pushed into the chair by some unseen force. The lean man then quickly sits down next to her at the head of the table. He rapidly claps his hands, and a few seconds later, 3 slim and ghoul-like servants shuffle into the dining room. Damon notices how they are practically dragging their feet as they lay down plates in front of the guests. Donnie looks down excitedly at the prospect of eating, only to find a small cube of stale bread, a thin slice of tomato with black spots, and a tiny pile of dried green herbs. One of the servants pours a conservative amount of wine into the glasses, struggling to lift the bottle before slowly exiting the room. Donnie stares at his plate in complete and utter disappointment. He stretches upright to eye the plates of the others and finds them to have almost exactly equal portions. He suddenly feels his body moving on its own as he grabs hold of the wine glass, and a strong, deep voice comes out of his throat.
I would like to make a toast to you, Gustav, and to your beautiful wife, Elizabeth. I have not eaten in a week, and this feast is taken with the utmost appreciation. Your generosity holds no bounds. Dude.
The party can feel their arms raise wine glasses before forcibly taking a sip.
You are welcome, and I am grateful for such polite company.
Gustav raises his glass and the nobles eat in silence. Damon notices how his tongue savours the taste of the sour tomato before swallowing, and Blossom realises how he takes the bread and hides it up the sleeve of his dress. The meal is over in a matter of moments. Gustav claps his hands again, and the same servants enter to take the plates away.
To the topic at hand.
Gustav wipes his hands on a cloth napkin and stands steadying himself against the back of his chair.
As you all well know, since our lord has taken residence within Castle Ravenloft, the cold mists have consumed the skies and ruined our already limited crops. We are all owners of farms and mills, yet we barely produce enough to feed ourselves, never mind the kingdom.
He puts his hands behind his back and stands tall.
I, for one, do not wish this famine to be our demise, so I have asked you here to discuss what can be done to ease it. My dear Elizabeth and I have our own plan.
He gestures towards the woman seated next to him with wide and frightened eyes.
But we wish for you all to voice your ideas first, so we know all of our options.
The nobles at the table lower their heads, ashamed they have taken a meal but cannot give anything of value in return. What can we do except try to escape this wretched land? A weary yet soulful voice abruptly emerges from Damon. Gustav stares at him with dark, tired eyes and allows there to be a moment of silence before responding.
You think the Lord will allow us to leave? You think no one has tried?
Gustav exhales, holding back his anger.
He has occupied this beautiful land, stolen its light, and surely He wills to take our lives as well. He is simply too powerful.
Aru feels a stern female voice leave her throat.
What my husband is trying to say. We only really have a few options, and leaving Barovia is not one of them.
She stands, wipes down her gown and adjusts her jewelry before continuing.
For us to hold any sense of dignity, we must stick together, no matter what. For it is the nobles that clearly sustain any semblance of order.
The guests nod wearily in agreement.
Let's be honest, we are dying. We must help one another. Just as we have graciously given you food today, we expect something in return.
Aru within Elizabeth feels a rush of adrenaline before the words pass her lips.
One of you must sacrifice yourself to the cause, so the others may survive.
The nobles look at one another, judging each other's reactions. Blossom hears a light voice leave his mouth.
What do you mean by sacrifice, Elizabeth?
Cold eyes turn to Blossom.
I mean what I said. Who is going to be the brave soul and save our lives by giving up their own?
All the nobles remain quiet, lowering their heads towards the table.
Well, if no one shall volunteer, then we will surely be forced to choose someone.
Elizabeth's voice is like venom in the air as Damon's wife begins to weep uncontrollably. He attempts to comfort her, but his touch does nothing to dry her tears. Donnie's body moves on its own towards Elizabeth. He can feel a sense of excitement which is not his own.
We can sacrifice someone, sure, but maybe to a mighty god who will bless us with food in exchange for blood. And if that does not work, I suppose we would already be halfway to following your plan, Mrs. Durst.
Donnie lowers his eyes out of respect, but a smile remains on his face. Aru feels her lips stretch into a devious smile without her permission, as she looks towards Gustav.
A god indeed.
Gustav solemnly agrees with a sly eye towards Elizabeth.
The one who rules this kingdom.
We still need a volunteer.
Hisses Elizabeth, staring at Damon's wailing wife. Damon's real voice manages to break through into the memory.
Are you crazy? Killing and demonic worship, it's not going to solve the problem. It's just going to make a bigger and worse problem.
Damon scowls as the velveted lady stares at the crying woman, seemingly ignoring his words.
Nadia,
Elizabeth's tone switches from sour to sweet.
you are the weakest of all of us, and probably not going to make it by next week. Give yourself over to a greater purpose, and help us all, darling.
Damon holds onto her hand tightly as she shakes with fear, and tears stream down her sodden cheeks.
What will happen when we grow hungry again? Are we going to kill another one of us? Until there is no one left?
Blossom's body stands leaning against the table for support and shouts at Elizabeth.
We are proud Barovians! There is no dignity in this!
But becomes quickly drained and retakes his seat. Elizabeth sits back in her chair and gestures elegantly to say, "Never mind."
Well, we don't have to. It was only an idea. Perhaps we use travelers and foreigners. Whoever comes here is indeed lost, and no one would come looking.
Gustav nods.
Better than starving.
The nobles around the table reluctantly nod as well.
I suppose we could offer a share of crops to the innkeeper in exchange for directing them to the manor.
Blossom sadly remarks.
As long as we swear not to tell a living soul about our true intentions. I do not want to find a mob of peasants at our door, especially with the little one on the way.
He places his hand on Elizabeth's shoulder. Aru grabs hold of her stomach.
What?
She exclaims.
We should make a pact of secrecy, so we shall not starve. And for the good of Barovia, of course.
Gustav continues, raising his glass. The nobles raise their glasses with their remaining wine, and repeat,
For the good of Barovia!
The party feels a sinking feeling as if they are about to fall through the floor. The world turns black and the sound of rushing water fills their ears. They gradually open their eyes and find themselves outside the library within the house. As they look at each other, they are no longer humans, but instead iridescent shadow creatures. They know they are consumed with the idea of getting into the music room. They feel their entire being intertwined with every atom of the house. They are the house. Aru kicks down the door and it splinters as it bursts open. Inside there is a group of 4 frightened adventurers, readying their weapons.
Stay back!
Shouts a Dragonborn, his shaking hands pointing a sword towards the party. The same thought can be heard across everyone. Sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. The collective gnawing instinct is so intense, it controls their shadowy forms to lunge forward without a second thought. Donnie feels his arms slam into the dwarf, badly crushing her ribs. He hears multiple sickening pops as she falls to the floor, gasping for air. Blossom feels a surge of energy within himself as a thunderous sound wave erupts into the room, causing the adventurers to fly backwards. The dwarf, human and dragonborn are thrown back and their heads crack on the hard wooden floor. The remaining drow adventurer cowers in a corner as Aru's shadow approaches. He blasts her with a bright light which burns through her spectral body, and she finds herself without form, but a consciousness observing from above. Damon reaches out towards the drow and slashes him with deadly ethereal claws, cutting open his torso as his body falls against the wall. The cleric desperately clutching at his innards before finally his head slumps down. A resonating groan emerges from deep within the house. It travels through the walls and across the floors, causing the furniture to hum from the vibration. The shadows are consumed with the thought of, "The Lord is satisfied, the Lord is satisfied, the Lord is satisfied." Damon manages to see past the thick fog that clouds his mind, and the windows of the room, which were once delicately crafted stained glass, and now bricked up. He knows full well the adventurers would have never escaped their fate. Again, vision fades from this scene as the party hears the gentle waves of the ocean, as they awaken to find themselves in a grey square room, with writing all over the walls. Lucian approaches Ains and clings to his arm. "It's all right, Thorn. They know now." Damon stands up slowly as his head feels like it wants to drift away, and his stomach wants to evacuate every ounce of its contents. Upon realizing where he is, he unevenly makes his way over to Ains. Lucian instinctively cowers behind him. "By the Raven, what was that?" "Now you know where the true power resides. Please end the curse and free our souls." Damon nauseously exhales. "Do we bury your bones?" The drow's frightened eyes dart around the room. "He wants you to stay, but you will never leave even after death. Your souls are his playthings." "Who?" Damon holds his stomach. "Who is behind this?" "He must be destroyed. Kill the Lord. Kill Strahd and free our souls." Tears gather in Ain's eyes. "Rose, he can see us." Lucian forces out a terrified whisper. Ains looks at Lucian with great concern and nods. Suddenly, 2 blue-tinted spectres burst out through their backs and quickly drift off into the air. The rogue and the warlock instantly crumple to the floor. "Are you all right?" Damon leans down, placing his hands on their cloaks. Ains tilts his head towards Damon. "Well, that was weird.